Lyndon versus Anthony Yarde 2, the sequel. The King versus the Beast. Will it be revenge or will it be repeat? This fight, of course, is happening on Saturday, almost exactly a year to the day since the first fight. And that first fight was very close. I think it's been the topic of much debate. Lyndon won that first fight via split decision. However, you can make a reasonable case for Anthony Yarde winning, for Lyndon winning, it being a draw. I've watched it twice myself, and once I've had it a draw, the other time I've had it Anthony Yarde on points. So just from that alone, you can see that these are two very evenly matched fighters. And if they fought 10 times, they'd probably win 5 of those 10 each. So, yeah, there isn't much between them at all. Lyndon I feel like his boxing style and his personality reflect each other. Because when you see him in interviews, he's quite reserved. I don't want to say shy. He doesn't strike me as someone who has anxiousness when it comes to socializing, but I feel like he just doesn't give much away. He's very chilled, very laid back, and he doesn't really say more than he has to. In a boxing ring, however, he seems to mimic that. He doesn't do more than he has to. He throws just enough punches. He moves just enough. There's no wasted movement. You know, there's no wasted offense, no wasted defense, no wasted movement around the ring. Everything's just enough. And I feel like this is potentially problematic for him when it comes to these close fights, because the impression he leaves is like he hasn't done enough, when in his head he feels like he's done just enough. So I definitely think he's a boxing minimalist. Relies mostly on the long jab, and that's certainly a formidable weapon of his. He's got a lot of range on it. He throws it with precision and accuracy, can put quite a bit of force into it as well. He does have a right hand, but the volume on that right hand is a lot lower than the jab. And I feel like he only throws it when he knows there's a high chance of it actually landing. He isn't the most dynamic. However, he does use his height and reach to pretty decent effect, and he's able to really command at long range. I feel he manages distance quite well. Anthony Yarde, however, also his personality, I think, reflects his boxing style, because in his interviews he's very jovial, very nonchalant, quite happy-go-lucky and upbeat and positive energy. And you see a lot of that energy in the way he fights as well, because he's a lot more dynamic than Lyndon You can see it in his active guard. He's constantly moving his head from one side of the centre line, from the other, and giving his opponent different looks. So he employs a lot more motion in his style, especially in the upper body, when you see this in particular when he's advancing on his opponent. However, despite this energy and motion, his biomechanics are quite flawed, and it can lead to some pretty compromised movement, I feel, from various positions with various punches and maneuvers. And if you want a visual example of this, you can check out the Anthony Yarde study I did. That's under the Outmatch Boxing Film Studies. It's like the second one I did. And yeah, you get a feel for what I'm trying to say here. However, despite this criticism of his biomechanics and his technique, he's still a puncher, a serious puncher, and a phenomenal athlete at that. So it really makes you wonder how powerful and athletic this guy could be if he fine-tuned his technique some more. And yeah, he'd be quite the marvel. I feel like there's a bit more precision when it comes to Lyndon ever so slightly, especially with the straight shots, because, you know, at long range he's very accurate, very precise, and you combine that with the economical movement. You know, he can be quite a formidable fighter at long range. However, one of his major shortcomings is that he can be outworked, and I feel like this was clear in the later rounds against Anthony Yarde. And it was strange because even though he didn't seem to be exhausted, it was the end of the fight, but he wasn't completely gassed. He wasn't breathing out of his arse or anything. And so I feel like this gives more weight to him actually having a problem with his right hand, because that was one of the narratives that came out of the first fight. But also I feel like the pressure made him gun shy. So I feel like it's a combination of both. I feel like he probably had a problem with his right hand and felt that that particular weapon was compromised. But then also Yarde increased and improved the pressure he was putting on Lyndon Arthur in the later rounds of that fight. And to expand on that point about Yarde and his pressure, because Yarde and Tunde were criticised for a lack of adjustment, which I think is partially valid. I think it's 50-50. Because Yarde did do a lot better in the closing rounds. If there was a complete lack of adjustment, he would have done the same thing for the entire fight. But that wasn't the case. It got to the later rounds, I want to say 8, 9, 10-ish. And then he started to change things up. And we saw what I feel was a much better approach to the fight compared to the early rounds. Because in the early rounds, for example, when it comes to cutting off the ring, in the early rounds, Yarde, it was his cutting off of the ring was pretty much non-existent. He resorted to following Lyndon Arthur around in a circular fashion, which is very amateurish. When you have a guy who's got an advantage at range, like Lyndon Arthur does, and even though he doesn't move excessively, he moves just enough. You still need to cut off the ring effectively. You need to cut it off, don't follow. However, in the latter rounds, Yarde definitely improved. He was taking angles more, so going across, trying to cut the ring off. And I think this is seen because Lyndon Arthur in the latter rounds of fight, he was against the ropes a lot more. And that's quite a vulnerable position, as we all know. But the way Anthony Yarde was setting up his shots as he was closing the distance was so much better in the late rounds, because he'd be on the front foot, baiting the lead hand, baiting an attack from Lyndon Arthur. And then when it would come, he'd slip to the back foot, but then rather than just resetting, he'd then swing his weight round from the back to the front, through a right hand to the body, under the lead arm, extended lead arm of Lyndon Arthur. And now that takes a lot of athleticism, it takes a lot of body control, but you need good eyes. You need a good understanding of which of your shots line up with your opponent in their current position. So I was actually quite impressed by Yarde, but it was just too little too late. But his work was a lot better in the late rounds. Like many rematches, I feel like adjustment is the key to victory. However, based on Yarde's track record, I struggle to see how he takes it to the next level other than starting earlier, because a theme in Anthony Yarde's career, which I've noticed, and I'm sure other people have as well, is the lack of development. Because when he first started, he was in the embryonic stage of his career, and he already had very effective technique for his level. And that was despite the fact that he had virtually no experience. You know, we all know that line, 12 amateur fights. But it's true. So with that caveat, with that asterisk of lack of experience, his technique and his ability was great. But he still has that same level of technique and ability, but he's now a contender. And so it's disproportionate, you know. He hasn't improved and upped his game to the level of a contender, because he has the physical ability to blow a lot of people away. He has a massive head start, a massive cushion, I want to say, that inherited ability and athleticism. But his technique and his IQ for his level right now, I feel, is underdeveloped. And so I don't feel we've seen that much improvement in Anthony Yarde throughout the course of his career, but especially since he lost to Kovalev. Because losses like that, they should really galvanize you and take you to the next level if you look at it with a critical eye and with an analytic eye and see what you can improve on. I don't think that has been done with Anthony Yarde. I feel like Tunde, I know it's a bit of a meme, but he kind of just says lines in the camp a bit more. He doesn't really give Anthony Yarde, from what I've heard and what I've seen, doesn't seem to give him the most practical advice. It doesn't look like they're changing things up and they're experimenting and they're trying to better their understanding of boxing and boxing theory. And so I feel like Tunde Ajayi, he's probably maxed out his potential as a trainer. And how he's done a great job thus far. But if Yarde wants to go further, I think he does have to explore other options. But that's a different conversation. So even though Yarde is a tremendous athlete, and I say that serious, he is a tremendous athlete, I do feel that Lyndon Arthur edges him when it comes to IQ and technique. However, Lyndon Arthur can be outworked. I think that's clear now. And so we start to see that these two really are evenly matched, because one has a strength but then has a weakness that the other one can exploit, but then that other one has a weakness that that one can exploit, and it makes for a very good matchup, very intriguing matchup. Both guys have good chins, and they both have, I want to say Arthur has good power, whereas Yarde has great power, even though Yarde, as I said in the study, doesn't have the mechanics of a puncher. He can still punch hard, which is scary. So I do think that if there is a stoppage, it will most likely come in favour of Yarde. Though I don't see this fight ending in a stoppage. I see it going to points. And I feel that if Arthur can be a bit more active for a bit longer, he should be able to bag enough rounds to get, I don't want to say a comfortable lead, but a lead nonetheless. And so these two, there really is so little between them. But I have to give you guys a prediction. This is tough. This is tough. But I'm going to go with Lyndon Arthur on a close decision. My instinct is telling me specifically a majority decision. And I feel like I'm going to nail my colours to that mast. I feel like it will be very similar to the first fight. But Lyndon Arthur might just win one or two more rounds just to solidify that lead by 1 or 2, as I say. Yeah, Lyndon Arthur majority decision over 12. That's my final prediction. So, let me know what you think in the comment section below. Do you think I've missed anything? Do you agree? Do you disagree? It's all good. Leave it in the comment section. I'll get back to you. Check out the Anthony Yarde study that I did. I feel like you guys will like that one. Goes over his technique, his IQ, biomechanics, all that stuff. So check it out in the Outmatch Boxing film studies folder. Like, comment, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you in the next video.